So, super excited to be joined here with Alison Kling. Has to be a first where we have a backdrop of lots of Crayola crayons. Yep. The smell of it is bringing me back to my elementary school days, which I just love. But we are so excited to be here on location at Free to Teach in North Alabama, helping teachers with free school supplies. And we're going to learn a little bit more about that in just a second. But Alison and I were just talking about how she has been heavily involved to promote this organization over the past couple of months, years for that matter. And it has just exploded with your leadership, which has just been so exciting. So before we dive into that, I want to welcome you to SheBoss.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
I'm excited that you're here.
I'm excited.
And would just love to start kind of from the beginning. I know you're a lifelong educator and have been involved in this, industry for a long time, but just give us a little bit of background.
Yeah. So I grew up on the West Coast in Canada and the US, and I moved a lot. And so I think from an early age, I just really loved getting to know new people. I loved making friends in new places. I loved exploring. My family are, just excited about adventure. And so that was kind of a big part of my childhood. Like we lived in these remote islands and would go kayaking for PE. Like it was never a dull moment. And so I think when I was in college, right before college, I went overseas and worked in a refugee camp. And I spent time there learning and growing and understanding kind of just the very diverse ways that you can impact people's lives by coming alongside them in what they're already doing and who they already are and just supporting. And so that really shaped my college experience. It really shaped a lot of the things I was able to do in college as far as just kind of learning and growing, but for a purpose. Mm-hmm. Like really that there's a sense of service and joy in service that I feel very strongly about and that I love to bring other people alongside with me. So I served on boards in my 20s. I traveled a lot to East Africa. I joined Teach for America, which is a teaching program where you kind of come out of college and they train you real quick and they throw you in a classroom and you have supports all along the way. But I think that was a very pivotal moment for me of just kind of experiencing the day in, day out work of building a classroom community and of engaging with children and families who really want, a great education and to see the value of that hard work. I would get on the train, but I was in New York City. I taught in Brooklyn and I lived on the Upper East Side, and I would get on the train every morning at 5:45 and I got to know everyone in my train car. Some of them were at my wedding. And, you get to engage in a community and be part of that community, which was such an honor. And so I taught for several years. And, I think that's just a theme as I think about, my work and what I do every day. It really is to bring people alongside this kind of joy in service and this, engaging people in serving others and kind of meeting the world's challenges, but with kind of a positive, joyful.
Love that.
Yeah. So that's kind of like
that. So I wanted to ask you, about your experience in refugee camps. Mm-hmm. Was that something that doesn't happen by accident? No. I would imagine that maybe your parents had an influence on you, whether it be with servant leadership when you were young through your church or something along those lines. How did you sort of follow that path?
Yeah, faith was so key, and just kind of no matter where you're at, there's people that need to be loved and to feel heard and accepted, and that was key. I think the moment, the watershed moment, like coming down from heaven moment, was I was working at Bootlegger, which is like a Canadian Gap. Okay, I really wanted a high school job. I played volleyball in high school, and I begged my parents, please let me get an after school job because I just wanted to be cool. I wanted cool clothes, And so I did this little job, and I one day I was in the staff room taking my break, my 15 minutes. And I read this article about women in refugee camps and how they pay back their microfinance loan like AX faster than guys. They're really strong entrepreneurs in the ecosystem of a refugee camp. And so I was so interested in that. And I started researching and trying to understand, why is that? And it's often because women flee on their own with their children. And they have to. I mean, they really do. This is just the reality. And so I started researching refugee camps. I learned about organizations that were already doing work. And this was kind of at a time when South Sudan was not yet South Sudan, actually, but they were dealing with a lot of conflict there. Mm-hmm. And so I was in northern Kenya and just kind of supporting education there And then, just coming alongside people that were already there for the long haul with the South Sudanese people.
Wow.
So yeah, it was like
What an
wild.
experience.
It was an incredible experience. And I think doing that before college really shaped my college experience.
Yeah. That.
When you like see the reality of people that are living in statelessness, they don't necessarily have a home. Not getting your car out the library or like a breakup or whatever. I mean, it's all important. It's college, you have to go through it.
Yeah.
But
the perspective on things different.
Just kind of seeing like I have a lot to learn here because there's a lot of challenges in the world. So I better work hard here because this is a privilege to be able to attend college.
Amazing. How were your parents in support of that when you came home and said that you go to Kenya?
Yeah, they were a little nervous about it. But again, like there was kind of that sense of adventure. And I do credit them with so much of that, just trying new things. And I mean, we would, especially on those remote islands, they were called the Queen Charlotte Islands. Now they're called Haida. You just never met a stranger. You're like, someone needs a ride somewhere. You're like, where are you from? What do you do?
Yeah.
So I think they were excited. And I think probably, honestly, for my mom, the New York City move was a little more scary. I was like, what? Because when I got into Teach for America, I got into the New York City core. And so that was a big shift too. But it's just kind of classic Al. I just kind of roam around the world. They're like, good luck. Yeah.
So after you had that experience, I mean, your first kind of position, was it in teaching specifically?
Yeah.
You just sort of continue that path?
Yeah. So after college, with Teach for America, they put you right in a classroom. So I was a second grade teacher, and then I taught third grade for 3 years. And so, I mean, it was a lot of learning how to establish trust with kids, how to not only manage like the classroom environment, but then once you get them seated in their desks, you have to teach them something,
And keep them interested.
And keep them engaged. And, it was a very powerful experience. I think if you can manage a classroom, you can pretty much do anything. Mm-hmm. That's what I think teachers are the most important leaders in our community because they're cultivating a love of learning for 10 hours a day. I mean, that's a lot of time with our kids. And I think that's really driven the heart of Free to Teach. Two is that I have and Eula did, our co-founder, had a very strong sense of the work that goes in to the classroom community every day. And so that was very foundational for me, leading a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard.
It is. I can only imagine.
It's a lot of work.
It's hard having 3 kids, let alone, 20 for that extended period.
Yeah, and you don't know, they're coming in from, maybe they had a hard morning.
Yeah.
Or there's something they're nervous about. And it's about, I think, listening and observing, and then the strong relationships with the families is very key. I mean, I still talk with some of my families, and one of my students just graduated from Smith, and I got to watch her graduation on Zoom or whatever. So yeah, it's very special because the teacher, you remember your teachers, you remember the way they made you feel. So to be that for somebody is special.
Yeah, absolutely it is. I mean, I have fond memories growing up and, not that I remember all of my teachers, but there are definitely a handful that stood out as making a huge impact, even if it was just, a recognition of effort or a simple statement in regards to emotion, right? Or whatever it might be where you just have someone who's not your parents because when you're growing up, sometimes it's hard to listen to them once in a while. But teachers can be so impactful and completely change the trajectory of your life.
Yes. And I think the ethos of Teach for America and of the school culture I was involved in, it was very much, if they didn't understand that concept, what did you do to not teach it great? It was a very strong Teach for America, very much pushes this kind of idea of locus of control. Mm-hmm. And of like owning the data and really looking at the data and saying like, okay, if they only scored 60% on that standard, what could I have done better to communicate it? And I think that the vision of TFA is really to set up leaders who have experienced the classroom. Mm-hmm. So, okay, go be a lawyer, go be a doctor, go be a politician, but you will always be standing on a foundation of, what it felt like to be day in, day out alongside kids. And you're going to know the realities of our education system in a way that maybe others wouldn't. Right. And so I think there's about 60,000 people now who have gone through TFA. And so it's fun to be part of that culture too. I I went to college in Canada, and then I moved to the States really to do TFA in New York. I had lived in the States when I was younger, so I'm a dual citizen. So I love it. I love being on both sides of the border. Oh my goodness. And so it was, it's been so fun to kind of anchor, like a lot of my experiences were anchored in that time of my life, my early 20s in New York City. And on the weekend, my girls, we would go out, we would hang out. Yeah. We went to museums. It was just fun. It was very fun.
So fun.
Yeah.
And where are you originally from?
So west coast of Canada, so British Columbia.
Okay.
Yeah. And then kind of Oregon, Idaho when I was little. So Lily did move around.
Different. Yeah. Very different from Vienna City. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then flash forward, what brought you to Huntsville?
So I met my husband in New York. It was crazy. He was at this church and there was like 40 people, and they were trying to like grow the church. And he was an investment banker on Wall Street. He was doing leveraged finance at Citibank. And I was teaching, and I was on a board of this nonprofit that worked in Eastern Africa. And us gals went to this Handel's Messiah concert at the church, and he was there as an usher. Okay. So he's like helping people find seats. And I was like, he's cute, whatever, like fine. And then he came up and we started talking, and he said, oh, well, did you put your information in the contact card basket? And I said, no, I did not. And then he said, well, would you put it in my BlackBerry? And I was like, okay. It was like 2010. Yeah, you remember. You remember the BlackBerry. It was pretty bold for the church narthex. So I was like, okay. But in New York, you'll probably never see someone again. I mean, that's it. There's no bumping into them, later. So we that's where we started.
That happened.
Yeah, he went for it, and I was proud of him because now here I am. Here I am. So he was doing that, and then Hurricane Sandy hit, and he really did feel a call to ministry. So he wanted to go to seminary, and so we actually both went to seminary and got our MDivs. I did kind of a focus on like international studies and looking at like faith-based nonprofits. And I worked at the UN during that time in their faith office. And he wanted to be a pastor. So then when we were finished up with seminary, we had a little baby, George, our first little guy. While I was in school, I took an exam and had him I was like,
oh my goodness.
I did the whole thing. And we'd have family fly in to help us. So we finished up school by the skin of our teeth. And then we moved here. There was this, he applied at churches across the country, but this was really a great fit. And we have family in town too. So we ended up here in 2016, right after George was born. So we showed up with a 3-month-old. And then I met Eula a year later here at Free to Teach. And that's kind of how I started.
Gotcha.
Here. Yeah.
So did you start volunteering with Free to Teach, or did you start working with her?
Well,
or what
I had Linda Brower. She's here in Huntsville. She now works for the Huntsville Hospital Foundation. She was the development director here with Eula.
Okay.
And then she was at our church, and she was transitioning to a different role at that point. And they were like, you should go meet with Eula. She's looking for a development director. And I wasn't working at that time. I was volunteering and doing like fundraisers for free, which is fine. But at some point, and it was great. It was a wonderful experience. I love helping at nonprofits. So that I met with Eula in this very room, and I just was so right away struck by what she had done here. Because I understood, like in New York City, there's nothing like this.
Which is surprising to me.
There's a program called Project Cicero, and you get books. You can go get like a suitcase full of books in Times Square. I was at a charter school, so we were funded a little differently. So we had a lot of resources, but there just wasn't anything like this for teachers. And so to walk in and to see that she had done this with her friends and her supporters, and it built it to what it was, I saw the potential. In fact, I remember leaving the interview with almost a feeling of dread, like, wow, I'm going to do this, and it's going to be a lot of work, but I'm going to do it, and it's going to be fun. But, I had this oh my gosh, I have a 1-year-old. How am I going to, because I saw the power of the model.
Mm-hmm.
And how, it had so much possibility.
Yeah.
And so that was fun. I worked with her for several years.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, talk a little bit about Eula and who she is and sort of what got her into starting this organization.
Yes. She's the best. We miss her so much. So Eula Battle is Mayor Battle's late wife. And she was such a force. She had a nickname for everybody. She never met a stranger, like I was talking about my mom. And just a very strong sense of service. And she was a teacher for 35 years. And so she was that teacher you wanted, right? Like she had a hug for everyone. Every kid had a nickname. She knew every parent. And I still meet her students to this day. Students of hers shop here at Free to Teach. I mean, that's powerful. And so she taught for a long time. And then I think in 2008, she retired. I think that's right when Mayor Battle started. He won the election that year. And she and a group of friends it was our origin story is a box of binders. They had this box of binders and they were like, how do we get this to a school? Like, how do we get this to a classroom? And that's where the idea of kind of a supply closet was born. Just gathering resources. Eula had a garage full of, Mayor Battle always jokes that this really did start in his garage.
Mm-hmm.
And it truly did, of all her books and all her resources. And so kind of that idea of centralizing those resources was born. And so they got together, and then Free to Teach was founded in 2011. And then in that first year, they gave away about $38,000 of supplies. And then this past year, we gave away $1.74 million. So it's really grown.
That's amazing. And I've heard a couple of different stats, and I've obviously heard you speak a few times. And I mean, throughout you guys, since the inception of Free to Teach, about $14 million or so.
$14 million total.
Which is insane.
It's insane. And it really has taken an entire community. And I think that's what I saw when I first met Eula, is kind of her ability to connect people to public education.
Yeah.
And I always say that public education is just a brilliant, powerful model that we've said as a country, that no matter where you live, no matter your zip code, you walk into the doors of a public school, we will educate you. And I, my vision here at Free to Teach, and my vision as a teacher, was that, every child deserves an excellent education and an equitable education. And I think Free to Teach really speaks to that. Both of those pieces.
Right.
So we want every kid to have equal access to the supplies and resources that they need. And then we want them to have an excellent education. But the power of Free to Teach really exists in the way we do it. And the way we distribute these supplies is through the context of relationship. It's through the teacher. Because I knew what it took to get the supplies to a child to just move them on. You're having a bad day? Okay, here's a snack. No one needs to know. I'm giving this to you.
Yeah.
You go take a walk, come back and be ready to learn. Teachers have, 25 to 30 kids in the elementary school classroom, 90 plus in the high school, middle school classroom. And they know them. They know those kids. And so if you can, none of us will ever give these crayons directly to a child.
Right.
We're going to be giving it to their teacher to find a way to get it to the kids in need. And so I think that very much speaks to our heart and our vision and Eula's vision. So this organization is kind of like an expression of this wonderful teacher recognizing what it took to build a strong classroom community, and then wanting to spread that to as many classrooms as she could.
Yeah. Well, and I love that model, because starting with the teacher empowers the teacher to be more in tune with their students as well, as opposed to a student who may just want 47,000 boxes of crayons at home. That's right. To add to his collection, and then, things that could have gone to someone else. So
I think that's key.
And, and I think there's some assumptions to be made about what the lack of supplies does within a classroom, especially to a student themselves. And teachers are already super proud with the things that they're having to be challenged with on a day-to-day basis. So that model in particular is unique in that you're kind of building through the teachers themselves. A lot of people may not realize some of the challenges that teachers go through on a daily basis. And there's been some recent changes and potential changes that will happen, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about some of those day-to-day things maybe that they are challenged with. And supplies is a huge piece of that. And I know you guys have some other programs that you've rolled out, which is amazing. But talk a little bit about that, just to open the eye.
Yeah. I think that what you said is so powerful. And, that's a key part of our organization, is empowering teachers and cultivating a strong community around teachers, that we are saying we support you. We believe in the work that you're doing every day. And so I think that I had someone come in once and they said, well, is this place about kids or about teachers? And I'm like, yes, it is about both. And I think telling that story has really propelled us forward, that, this is a place where a teacher can make choices, where a teacher can think through, okay, what are my upcoming lessons and what do I need? And so I think that when we think about the challenges a teacher faces, There's definitely funding challenges, but they do receive classroom funding. And they might not get it at the beginning of the year. They might get it halfway through the year. And so we're really wanting to exist in the gap between that funding and make sure they can spend that very strategically. Get the microscope, get the curriculum, get the ink. You know, we don't have that here. And then come here for all of those extra things. And I think throughout the day, there's just so many little moments that matter, like the Kleenex box. You know, if you got a sniffling kid and you don't have a box of Kleenex, that makes a difference.
Yeah.
You know, that can derail a moment or a lesson or whatever it is. So I think teachers have this additional burden of, you know, handling a lot of emotional experiences throughout the day for kids and really wanting to be there for them while still needing to teach them the math lesson, you know? So I think throughout the day, there's just so much that they handle. And so I think that what Free to Teach has really developed into as well is a place to tell those stories, tell teacher stories, lift out the powerful work they're doing in the classroom, and then equip them to do it. And so I think really the way we've grown has been in response to teacher needs. So when we started, it was very focused on core supplies. When we started, it was core classroom teachers only, which was just, you know, funding constraints, and every other month you could come. But I know that across the school ecosystem, teachers are all funded very differently. Educators, I'll call them, because, you know, you have a speech therapist, you maybe have an in-school suspension officer, a school nurse. So really, when I took over after Eula passed away, I really wanted to carry this kind of vision forward of empowering teachers, but not just what I think they need, but really listening to teachers. And that's really what's driven us forward as well. So I think that, you know, when we opened up to school nurses, that was key for us because they see every kid across the whole school. And that's where we developed our feminine hygiene program, Free to Learn.
Love that. I saw that. That's such a great idea.
It's been so great. I mean,
Such a great idea.
and it's just, that's a national issue
Yeah.
that we know that 1 in 4 girls struggle to afford period products. You know, we know that that often keeps them out of school, and teachers and nurses are trying to figure out, like, how can we reduce the anxiety here? And this is 3rd and 4th grade on.
Yeah.
This isn't just middle
All
school.
it takes is one embarrassing. We've all been there. Right? It takes one moment, and then if you don't have, I mean, it's just it could just change things so significantly for a young
And
girl.
so when we started to look at that issue, it's like, okay, we have 4,000 plus shops a year, right? And it's growing. We're going to have 5,000. And it's like, they're already coming for the crayons. We know they need more materials than that. So then we built in this whole section of tons of in-kind resources. So about $1.5 million a year we source in really interesting, gently used Lego, a rolling chair that an office might not need because they're redoing their office. You know, we gather these resources from across the community, but then we also want to get with our teachers and say, what is it that you need? So that was how Free to Learn was born. It was just very much like, right now, we can only give a pad to a girl in need, and we need sized underwear, we need wipes, we need liners. So we created a really simple pack, and we're giving 6 out every time a teacher comes in. They can come every month, so we did change that. And that's been very powerful just to kind of, it's just a picture of our model. They know that you just need a basket in the corner of a classroom that someone can grab. It's not hot pink. It's this very ugly burlap sack, and you can just take it and maybe sister needs discreetly. You can grab it for her, you know, whatever it is, discreetly. So I think that's kind of speaks to why the model is so powerful, is because I think it helps maintain the agency and the dignity of the students as well.
Oh, which is so important, so important. Let me ask you this. I know, I know organizations like United Way, they do their needs assessment throughout the community. How do you guys really tap into the teachers? Like, what's that process look like for you to figure out what those needs are?
Well, my team will laugh at me because we have shops every single, every other day, basically. We'll have 75 teachers on a Tuesday, 75 on a Thursday, 135 on a Saturday, and we're open a lot of Saturdays. And so I really talk to a ton of teachers all the time. I mean, that's one thing.
And that is a huge.
It is huge. We have a mid-year survey we do, so we do collect a lot of data from them. But I mean, I'll be on checkout duty, and they're like, everyone's rolling their eyes at me because I just talk. I'm like, what are you going to do with this? And how are you going to use this? And like, what are your needs? And everyone they see me coming. They're like, oh, brother. But I basically conduct these full interviews, and then I tell their story on our social. So do follow us on social. And so that's a way we kind of get anecdotes. They email us a lot. Hey, do you guys have this or this? The other piece is we do our mid-year survey. That's key. We have a teacher advisory council. So I meet with them quarterly just to kind of hear what their needs are. And then one thing that's really exciting is we have started building out a national network of teacher resource centers. And so we kind of look at other communities and what are they doing that's innovative. And one of the hot button issues right now is teacher retention.
Mm-hmm.
And teachers are really struggling to stay in the profession. It's very challenging. The work is challenging. The pay is challenging. And so one of the things that we see the resource centers doing around the country is just providing even more resources to support teachers, whatever that might look like. And so, we're always going to be core supplies and more, but we've got the teachers coming. And so what else can we plug in? And I'll give you a fun example of such a classic Al moment where I was on a plane I have 4 kids and I had one of my screaming babies on a plane. I'm pacing the aisles, right? And I see this like PowerPoint presentation. These 2 clearly colleagues are working away and it said education in Alabama. And I was like, what do you guys do? Like, excuse me. And it's like we're circling over Tucson because there's a storm in Denver. Like, it was insane. We were on that plane for like 9 hours. It was supposed to be like a 2-hour flight. And it was insane. And if they were here, we would all be laughing about it because it was a long day. But I got this, we had this conversation and they're from Energy, Alabama. And it was Daniel Tate and Laurel Esposito. And they're here in Huntsville. And they were like, we have this energy, education thing. I was like, well, how many teachers download your lessons? And they were like, not a ton because teachers are busy. Like they don't have time to download and cut all the pieces. So we fully build out those lesson kits now. We got a $5,000 grant from PPG and Northrop Grumman provided funding. And so we took their best lessons from the website. We downloaded them. We have volunteers come in. We pack those kits up. And then teachers can just take those lessons and it's ready to go. And that's 3 or 4 days of material for 30 kids. And so just finding ways to build partnerships. We just finalized a partnership with the Huntsville Botanical Gardens. And we're getting classroom garden.
That is adorable.
It's adorable. And so I think just leaning into what's already doing really well in the community and thinking like, how can we get that to teachers? Because we need stuff for their cart.
Yeah, I love that. It's fun. So based on the needs assessment that you've done and based on how much momentum you're already starting to build and building those relationships, what's missing? I mean, what is on the horizon that you're like, yeah, this is our next big thing?
Okay. Well, we just the journey I have been on for the past 6 months, maybe 9 months now, has been about expansion. And so
Physical expansion?
geographic expansion of who can access our store.
Okay.
And so, for years, Eula and I had thought about what would it look like to grow this beyond the borders of Madison County. So currently we serve, well, not currently, we just expanded, but for a long time it was 88 public schools in Madison County's 3 public school systems. And we're very clear that this is an organization aimed to reach public school children. So, we don't support private schools, but we love them and we know their teachers are amazing. We don't support homeschool families and we love them too. And we know they're amazing, but we've really had to stay focused on our public school focus as an organization. And so, I get calls every day from teachers that need help and they're in Rainbow City and they're in Mobile and they're all over. Right. And so I talk to a lot of people all the time about, you guys could start this. Like, I will give you the playbook. I will give you everything. But it just hadn't happened. And so I really met with the staff. We met with our teams. I talked to teachers. And I started to lay the groundwork for what it could look like to increase access to our store, our current physical location, which I know is a bit of a drive for some. So I was nervous about that. But when I brought that to my board, it was such an immediate yes. They were like, let's figure this out. And I read books all the time. I'm like a crazy business book lady. I'm always like, what's happening here? Because I think that it's so powerful to not only reflect on where you've been and the moves you've made in the past and say, hey, I did do that well, or, ooh, I could have figured that out better. That's a good point that he made or she made. And so I really have thought a lot about scale. And I think one of the best books on scale I've read is called Unreasonable Hospitality. And that's Will Guardia. And he talks about how anytime you scale an organization, you want to nurture and protect the very thing that allowed you to scale in the first place. And that's our core volunteers. We have 30 to 40 people here that love it.
Yeah.
Every week, our staff, our culture of joy. It's a very joyful place. Yeah. It's a very positive place. On a Tuesday, it's popping in here. People are cruising. Sometimes there's a quiet Tuesday and you're like, ooh, they all had a hard day today. But so we kind of went on that journey. I really met with a lot of people in the Limestone community, which is where we decided to start. I met with Mayor Marks and Pammy Jamar and just so many people there. learning and coming alongside. Really, I wanted to come alongside the supers there and what they're already doing, and be a strong partner. And so we announced on Valentine's Day that we're expanding to open to all teachers and school staff in Limestone County. And they come every month now. So that was big. And so now I think it's about letting that dust settle a little bit. Like, I mean, I would love a blank check. I need Melinda French to call me and give me a blank check. Melinda, are you watching SheBoss?
If you're hearing.
Yeah, if you're hearing this. I see the opportunity of growing and reaching more teachers, but I also see how valuable this organization is, and I want to cultivate and grow it carefully, but not lose momentum. So I'm in a fun tension right now of that moment.
Yeah. And it's amazing to me because you are so vocal about this, which I love, but you have a lot of community support from local companies and organizations and volunteers that get involved. And so what does that look like for someone, whether it is a blank check or it's a team of volunteers that can come in and help pack some of those curriculum sets up? Like, what does that look like? Someone wants to get involved.
Yeah. So I think that one of the things I always think about is anytime someone gives, I consider every donor a big donor. Your hour of your time is powerful because, it propels this whole organization forward. It really does. We have a staff of 3 full-time and 1 part-time person, and we give away $2 million a year. I mean, that's pretty powerful. And so I think that time is very valuable. I think if your company or your business or as an individual, you want to engage with your finances, I think we tell a very compelling story about why that makes a difference. We're sourcing because of the gifts. We're keeping these lights on and paying this rent. And we're able to source $1.5 million in resources. And a lot of that is included in supply drives. So supply drives are a key way. But I think that what we've done as an organization and what I love to do is kind of get to the heart of where our vision aligns. So if your company has a vision that your employees should live in a wonderful community, I'm part of that puzzle.
That's everybody.
That's everybody. That's everybody, right? You want your team to have great schools. You want this to be a thriving community. And so I think that I love talking about when our vision overlaps. Like, that's what I want to.
Yeah.
I get there a little differently than someone else. And that's why I see so much value in every nonprofit and what they're doing to create and cultivate a strong community. And so for people that want to get involved, I'd say definitely come see the store. And it is really simple, but it's very transformational. That we're just taking, I mean, people don't think they're like pencils, paper, but really it means so much, not only to the child who receives that, but to a teacher who just kind of has that burden lifted. It's very critical.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And
so your facility is beautiful and it's huge and you have everything here. I mean, there's so much. I didn't realize that it was so large. It's amazing.
It's so powerful. And like, I think the story too is, helping connect us with people that, like I had an organizer call me. She said, she helps. I need her to come to my house. She was like a home organizer and she always is finding little things that really, some of this stuff teachers couldn't even buy if they wanted to, it's like really interesting, unique materials. So I think that just engage with our work on social media is key. Financial gifts are key. That propels us forward. And some of the things that I will never give up, and I see how expensive it is, but it's so powerful, is like, for example, copy paper. I spent $30,000 in copy paper last year. And people are like, wait, but why and how? And I think that just recognizing that's a huge teacher need. I don't want them spending their state budget on copy paper and printing. Why don't we, provide that here and really kind of accelerate what they're able to do in the classroom? And so I'm just gonna always need copy paper. And so bring me a box, so there's a lot of ways to engage. But I think that one of the things I'm so proud of our organization, our team for doing is just continually keeping that vision at the center, that every kid should have access to an excellent education and that every kid should have access to an empowered, joyful teacher. Their teacher should feel that support. And so we're proud to be part of that puzzle piece.
That is amazing. That is so great.
Yeah, it's fun.
And I love to hear about the vision of where you guys want to go and how things started off with just a box of binders, right? To this massive facility that you have here that is just, like you said, lifting that emotional burden from teachers, which is so important. One of the things that just in getting to learn a little bit about you, I used to on the steering committee for Flagship and Greater Leadership Huntsville. So L35, best
Okay, wow, congrats.
yeah.
L36.
But we just so
We
did. I was really glad I wasn't in the pandemic year because that would have been challenging.
No, they had a hard
That would have
year.
been challenging. But one of the things and so Greater Leadership of Huntsville, we've talked about this a lot. And Christy Finley was our last SheBoss. She was
Our biggest fan.
love her. Yeah, she's amazing. She's amazing and so funny. She's so funny, so funny. But one of the when we were in Flagship, everybody who goes through Flagship program and most of the Connect or the programs, you do a small group project.
Yes.
And I happened to have 2 out of the 3 superintendents in my group.
Wow.
When we went through Flagship, and so Education Day for me was amplified, not only because it was the first time that I'd been to that program and heard all about it, but it was amplified by the sidebar conversations I would also have with Dr. Nichols and Christy at the time. And so our small group really started questioning, of course, the needs for students were so great, especially in a post-pandemic world, which I know we hadn't really talked about much, but the conversation kept on coming up around the burden that the teachers were having to carry. Because in addition to continuing their curriculum using new mediums and new approaches to everything, which as a parent of 3 kids in elementary, middle, and high school, it was insane. It was a little bit of a nightmare, and I give them so much grace for that. But the mental health of the teacher was something that I felt we just felt needed more attention, right? Because they were having to serve in a very, very different role as a teacher, especially when kids came back into the classroom and having to deal with everything. So realizing that side of it, I think, was huge. And what you guys are doing directly impacts so much of that because it just helps, like you said, to kind of lift that burden.
Yeah, it lifts the burden. And I think it's powerful to be seen and heard. I'm speaking at a conference soon on this idea of belonging. And I think that is something I just was reflecting on this with someone today, that we created a space that belongs to teachers, and it's for their students, but it's really a place that's for them, where they come in and they look across the room and they're like, you're teaching 3rd grade, I'm teaching 3rd grade. What are you going to do with this unit? It's like, it's a community. And I think that what's powerful about what we're doing is just, they're already there. They're already in the classroom for 10 hours a day. Why not just fill them up? Why not just give them everything we possibly can? And as much as we can, we do, we have a space on our website called the teacher resource page. So if there's a fun deal for teachers or there's a free event or whatever, we try to highlight that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of question around, like, how can I impact a classroom or how can I help a teacher? Unless you have a kid in a classroom or see a Donors Choose link or something, it's hard to know.
Yeah.
And I think this is that's the power of this place. And our volunteers play a huge part in that. The culture that we've created as a volunteer team and that our staff has really propelled forward is a culture of hospitality. And then it's just like every opportunity we have to just welcome them in. Oh, you're late for your appointment? It's fine. Just come in. Or, oh yeah, it's the wrong day. It's okay. Just grab a cart. Let's go shop. And I think it's just very practical. And, it's funny. A lot of times it's not the teacher. Like, the teachers love us. They'll say thank you. It's like if their spouse comes to like move a filing cabinet or something, they're like, thank you. My accountant can't believe how much money we've saved this year, because they're always doing whatever it takes. They're always filling in the gaps. So why not do whatever it takes for them?
Yeah, absolutely. This is awesome. But I think it's the perfect way to end of getting involved with you guys. I mean, figuring out what those needs are. And I just love how you're meeting the teacher and also meeting the student where they are, which is just amazing. So get involved with Free to Teach if you haven't already. I'm pretty sure that you nailed it by saying that what you guys are doing, the mission aligns with anybody who wants to create a thriving community.
Yeah.
And you're making generational change by really helping these students. Like, I just love that because you're, not taking that confidence out of them when they ask for something that they don't have, and instilling that power in the teacher, which is just amazing. So thank you so much for sharing your story. And this was amazing. So Free to Teach, go check them out if you haven't already, and get your employees, together and do a volunteer drive and a school drive. They got tons of crayons, but I'm sure they could always use it. We're in bar. The crayons break. Exactly. Thank you, Allie.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you guys next time.